Hello, everyone. It's really nice to see some familiar faces and hopefully get to meet a lot more new people. I would like to begin by asking you to visualize something. Imagine a cello, and not just any cello. We're talking like world-class cello. This thing is like crafted with perfection. The strings are tuned perfectly. It's a beautiful instrument. And then sitting right beside this beautiful cello, we have the world's best cellist. Maybe it's Yo-Yo Ma, maybe it's somebody else. We've got a beautiful cello and a cellist. And now my question is, between these two things, which one do you think is more valuable or important to the magic that might unfold? Well, of course, it's both. It's the masterpiece instrument as well as the musician. And the thing is, that's actually kind of the same thing when it comes to us as practitioners, be it a massage therapist or otherwise. But there's a difference. You're both. You are both the master craftsperson as well as the instrument of transformation. So what I'm here to talk to you today about is you. That's kind of my obsession, my shtick. The thing I'm always talking about is you are your number one client. You are the thing that matters most in your practice. So maybe I'll back up a little bit and I'll tell you a little bit more about myself. So yes, my name is Dr. Jess Reynolds, and I run a continuing education company called AIM Online Education. And for the last 5 years, I have been obsessed with one question, and that is, what makes a massage therapist successful? I'm thinking that this is a very good question for me to ask as a provider of continuing education. I feel like I should try and produce content and courses and workshops that really help practitioners become more successful. So in answering this question, I went all out. Every single student who enrolls in one of my online courses, they get sent a survey. And at this point, I've gotten a little over 3,000 people respond to that survey. Now, that's a lot of data to sort through, but it's been very helpful because I've asked a wide range of questions within this survey to sort of answer this question. Now, additionally, I've interviewed a little over 60 successful wellness practitioners on my podcast, Aim in Practice, asking each one of them the same question. And then lastly, I have gone through as much industry data and academic research that I could get my hands on, all trying to answer that question, what makes a massage therapist successful? Now, the answer, it might surprise you because it definitely surprised me when I got to the bottom of all of this. As I sorted through it all, what ended up coming to the top time and time again is that thing, that secret sauce, that thing that takes a good massage and makes it a great one is you. Well, more specifically, it's your own inner process, your own commitment to yourself and your self-development. So let's unpack that a little bit. But first, I think we should actually define something because as Mark said when he was, the entire MTM team was a guest on my podcast a few weeks ago, what do you mean by success? Because it does have a different definition for every person. So the working definition that we're going to go through has 3 different characteristics. Number 1 is success means you've got longevity of a career. It doesn't injure you or harm you physically or emotionally, meaning it's burnout proof, that you can do it for a long period of time. Now, another characteristic of success is that you love what you do. I think that's a pretty important characteristic. And lastly, which is the obvious one, you make a sustainable income. I'm not talking like Scrooge McDuck style where you're swimming in a bunch of gold. maybe that's the goal. But I mean, you're making enough money that you're making a stable income or stable living. All right, so we've got our definition, so let's start to unpack this a little bit. Within that survey, I asked a bunch of questions. 2 questions in particular were very important to understanding the answer. Number 1 was asking massage therapists, practitioners, what type of courses, what type of education you most want to take? What are you most interested in learning? Now, around 75%, a bit more than 75% of the answers were technique-based. Right? And that makes sense. Everything from cupping to lymphatic drainage to instrument-assisted soft tissue release. Like the range was wide, but the topic was pretty much all within technique. And this conference reflects that perfectly, right? It's about learning techniques. That makes complete sense. But it was the answers to the second question that really made me pause, that shone a totally different light on this question. Because the second question was, what do you think makes a good massage therapist? Asking massage therapists this. Now, the answers were overwhelmingly something to do with the individual. Things like good bedside manner, good communication skills, good at listening. People would say, when I go to a practitioner, something that's super important to me is that I vibe with them, that I connect with my practitioner. In fact, it was less than 3% of the people who answered the survey said something about technique. I figured based on the first thing, like we all want techniques, that a good massage therapist would be one who really nails their cross-fiber friction or knows like 15 different modalities. That's what makes a good massage therapist. But truly, that was not the answers I got. So suddenly we have this dichotomy, right? On one hand, it's like we all want these techniques. On the other hand, what we think makes a good massage therapist is kind of the inner work stuff. So what about these interviews that I did? Again, 60 plus practitioners ranging from successful solo mobile massage therapists all the way up to psychologists with 3 wellness centers and 60 plus employees, all asking the same question. And invariably, the answer was exactly the same. It's the inner work. It's the communication skills. It's the capacity of the practitioner to show up in the treatment room. So what does this mean, right? What does it mean when we talk about that? That seems to be the thing that comes up over and over again. I actually got curious about the technique part, because since everybody's talking about doing your own work, well, what about technique? And when I asked a whole bunch of people, these practitioners, as well as sending out a separate survey, pretty much everybody said the same thing again. Well, yes, technique matters. Technique matters so much that is kind of presupposed in the same way that if you were to go to that cello performance, you would go in expecting the cellist to know how to play the instrument. And that's actually the same thing with us. The expectation is we have great techniques and we give a really good massage. That's the baseline assumption. It's that extra stuff, the secret sauce, the X factor that really leads to true success by whatever definition you choose to give to it. So when we think about this idea of self-development, personal work, doing our own thing, a lot of us might think of self-help, and that's a little bit cringy for many of us for good reason. It's a bit of a chaotic world out there with thousands of books, countless hours of YouTube videos, and Lord knows how many social media gurus claiming the top 5 tips for the new you. How do we sort through all of this? Well, my suggestion is you don't. Because you see, it doesn't matter if you look through the ancient Vedic texts or you read The Power of Now, everybody's saying the exact same thing. Know thyself. Spend some time reflecting inward and develop self-awareness. So it turns out that thing, self-awareness, that's actually the secret sauce. That's the thing that matters, but how? I'll unpack that a little bit. I could talk about the importance of self-awareness for weeks and weeks. In fact, I do. I've got an entire workshop where I spend 9 weeks unpacking this whole idea. But there are 2 characteristics in particular that I think really have a profound impact. As we go through this process, all of us, any of us, go through the process of kind of doing some self-examination. One of the first things that comes up is we start to realize that some of our clients give us energy and some of our clients completely wipe us out. Sure, we can all relate to that experience to one extent or another, but what is the difference? Well, it turns out when we see clients that are in alignment with us, our authentic selves, they tend to give us energy. So one of the things that we can do in order to have a sustainable career, remember that's that first characteristic of success, is we can start working with clients that match us, that are in alignment with our authenticity, and that takes a lot of inner work to figure out who you actually want to work with. I mean, I had a problem with that. When I first graduated, I graduated as Dr. Jess. Man, I took myself so seriously. And I was committed to working with autoimmune clients. That's it. Like, give me the hard cases. After about 6 years, I was pooped. I was burnt out. Took a bit of a break, came back, reassessed, started working with clients that were healthy but aiming for optimal. And lo and behold, that cliche saying, if you do what you love, you never feel like you're working, it's the same thing. I don't really feel like I'm working. It is sustainable. I don't injure myself emotionally, mentally, or physically. Now, there's something else to it as well. There's something a little bit deeper than just this idea of working in alignment, and that's this thing I call therapeutic presence. Have you ever had the experience when you go into a practitioner, massage therapist or otherwise, you go in and you feel like you're the most important person in the entire world, right? If you haven't had that experience, it's an amazing one. And the beautiful thing is it's completely free for both you as the practitioner and for the client. Now that thing, that feeling like you are the most important person in the world, that's part of therapeutic presence. Let's look at that a little bit. How does that matter? How does developing therapeutic presence really translate to true, genuine, long-lasting success? Well, we have to kind of dig into this thing called coherence. So coherence is a principle both in physics and biology, and here's essentially what it means. If there are 2 objects capable of vibrating at the same frequency, they're going to. For example, if you take a tuning fork and it's tuned to C and another tuning fork and you whack one of them, the second one will begin to vibrate in the same way very quickly. That's a simple example. Now, another example is if on that wall, if I were to have 100 clocks, all of them with pendulums swinging back and forth, and I put one really big clock right in the center and set that pendulum going back and forth, well, it turns out within a very short period of time, every single clock on that wall is going to be swinging at the exact same rhythm. That's called coherence. Anything with a frequency is susceptible to this law of coherence, which turns out we all have one of those, a frequency that is. Might sound a bit woo-woo, but I can guarantee you it's well researched and backed at this point in time. And what modulates, what changes the vibe, the frequency that we are emitting is our emotional state. If we're ramped up in a sympathetic state, like we're stressed out, we emit a very different energy than we do when we're calm and chill and relaxed. And we all know this, right? If you've got a significant other, you don't have to see their face. You're just sitting there minding your own business, sipping your coffee, and all of a sudden you're like, whoa, what's happening? You turn around and your partner, who you're very in tune with, is having a bad day. We feel it. So we've got this thing called coherence, and it is actually so important that there's another principle in biology that's called co-regulation, and it's genuinely essential for our survival. So babies, little infants, they do not have the capacity to regulate themselves like us as adults. When we get worked up, you can say to yourself, just take a deep breath. It's okay. It's going to be fine. You can talk yourself down, maybe. Infants obviously can't do that. So when an infant goes into a state of distress, their nervous system keeps ramping up and ramping up and ramping up, and nothing's going to stop it until eventually, if they're left long ago, it just plummets. And that's actually what we call developmental trauma, one of the things that leads to that. But fortunately, we've got parents for the most part. And one of the things that parents do is when a baby is crying, they pick it up and they hold it. Now that works for many reasons, but one of which is because parents' nervous system regulates the infant. So when an adult holds an infant, it is our nervous system that's regulating the baby's nervous system and brings them back down into a state of emotional regulation. Now the thing is, that doesn't end at infancy. We're all doing it right now. We are all regulating each other's nervous systems. Our nervous systems below our conscious threshold, they're having conversations. So keep that in mind, right? Because it turns out when you go into a room, you should be the biggest clock. You should be the person who is setting the emotional tone of the room. And you might be thinking, well, no, I'm the type of practitioner and I'm identify as the body mechanic. I like to fix problems. Or maybe you're identifying as the person who's like the relaxation specialist whose definition of a good massage is they fall asleep and snore. It doesn't matter where you are in this spectrum of practitioner. The fact is, allowing your clients to drop into this regulated state is essential. One, for healing. Turns out the body doesn't heal very well when we're in a ramped up state of sympathetic activation. But there's another reason. Regardless of the modality, our clients need to talk to us. They need to open up and they need to tell us what their problem is. Have you ever had those clients who come in and on the intake sheet, they very clearly say sore back, and you say, how you doing today? And they're like, great. What brings you? And oh, I'm fine. It's good. There's no problem at all. You know the type, right? Is creating an environment where even the most hardened individual feels safe enough to say, like, listen, my back really hurts and it sucks because I can't lift up my kids. That's part of developing therapeutic presence. Now, there's much more to it than just that, right? I mean, I've only got a couple minutes left, I'm sure, to go through this, but it's something I could talk about endlessly. So let's tie a bow on this. Let's wrap it together. This idea of success has to do with technique. There's no question there. It is essential. You need to have the techniques to give a really good quality massage, and ideally, you even have the modalities to get quality therapeutic outcome, but that extra something special, that turns out to be you, what you do, your own commitment to your inner process, your commitment to self-development, your commitment to your own degree of self-awareness, to developing therapeutic presence, all of these things. These are the things that turn a good massage into a great one. And they're the things that turn a simple transaction into a transformative experience. And of course, these are the things that turn one-time clients into lifelong advocates for you and your practice. And going back to that definition of success, if you operate from this place and attract clients that really fit you through being authentic and doing your own inner work, it is going to be sustainable, and you're not going to be working with clients who cause you body pain. You're going to work with the right type of client, and you're going to be able to do so for a long time. You're going to make a good living while doing it. So with that, I sense my time is up. I'm very grateful for all of you here to listen to the words I have to say, and for MTM, enjoy the rest of the conference.